What's going on, Always Hope Nation? Always Hope Tribe? Always Hopers? No, that last one didn't work, right? We're going to keep workshop that for a little bit. So listen, if you got a good idea for that, for what we can call our tribe, our community here that we're starting here with Always Hope, can please leave a comment and let me know what you think and hit me up. All right, but anyways, welcome everybody to the Always Hope podcast. So grateful that you're here with me. In today's show, I welcome Kristen Jenson, who is the founder of Defend Young Minds and the author of the book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. Listen, parents, if you have not read this book to your kids yet, do yourselves a favor, pause this episode, go get the book and read it. It's a tremendous resource for your kids. It will open up great conversations and equip you and equip your children to know how to be able to navigate images online, both that are good and both that are bad. So in today's show, we talk about teaching our kids digital self-defense, why filtering and monitoring software is important, but is not enough. Giving our kids space to develop the virtues that we are trying to teach them, tips for parents on how to have these conversations about porn, because it's really uncomfortable, and I know that it is. And so we offer some tips on how to be able to have those conversations that are so necessary with our children, and what to do if you're a parent who has discovered something on the web browser and on a history, and you realize your kids are looking at stuff that they really shouldn't be, how to be able to navigate those conversations. Parents of all ages need to know this information. So please, if you find this show helpful, share it with one other person who you think would benefit from it. Well, let's get into this conversation with Kristen Jenson. Kristen Jenson, welcome to the Always Hope podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mario. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so grateful to have you. I was sharing with you before we get started, and I want the listeners to know that we have been longtime users of your book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. I was sharing with you before we get started, but I'd love to let the audience know that I think it was at a 2015 National Center for Sexual Exploitation Conference in Orlando that I attended, which is wonderful. If the listeners don't know about Nkosi, look them up. Take the time to do that after, of course, you listen to this episode. But head on over to that website to get a lot of great resources related to sexual exploitation. And at that conference, I believe, I don't know if you were there, your team was there, but somebody was handing the book out, and I was able to get my hands on it, which was just wonderful. And so I brought it home and was able to share it with my wife, and we read it to our boys. We have 4 kids, just so you know, 4 boys that range from 9 to 19. So they're 9, 13, 15, and 19, somewhere in that ballpark, I believe. And so this obviously is a topic that we have lots of conversations about. And so to be able to kind of have a resource like that at an early age, to be able to kind of begin proactively talking about these topics, we've just been grateful for. So I want to start the episode just by saying thank you. Thank you for writing the book.
Well, thank you for using it, and thank you for sharing it with your listeners. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Well, it's great. So let's just kind of start there. Like where did you start? Where'd you get the idea of this? The picture book about pornography. That seems like an oxymoron, right? That's there's a contradiction there somewhere, right? Like this is a
Yeah. I know. I've been asked, are there bad pictures in Good Pictures, Bad Pictures? I'm like, no, we do not show bad pictures. No. Yeah. What's a nice girl like me doing talking about pornography and kids, right?
Yeah.
Well, this was not in my life plan.
Yeah.
I will assure you, it's not my life plan. But I moved to a new city, and a woman approached me in my community that I'd met, and she told me about her, she had a large family. She was homeschooling them, trying to protect them from the world. She took them to church every Sunday. She was doing, all that she thought she could. And her oldest son, they found out, at 17 at the time, was sexually molesting his younger brothers and sisters. So from the 14-year-old down to the 4-year-old, I think. And it's devastating. And, pornography definitely was a part of this. And we know that pornography is fueling an unprecedented huge increase in child on child harmful sexual behavior and sibling sexual trauma. And so that was the case, and it was definitely fueling this. So um, I heard about her story. She talked late into the night and the whole fallout. It was just really sad. And it's continued to be sad. Unfortunately, there's continued to be some problems. The oldest boy that was doing this went to counseling, went to a therapy, like went to a program
Yeah.
that they had in our state, which thankfully they did have a program.
Hmm.
And, he never, a lot of these kids, if they get treatment, like they don't turn into pedophiles, right?
Right.
But his older brother, his younger brother grew up to become and had to serve 6 years in a state penitentiary
God have
for
mercy. Oh my
child.
gosh,
So
Kristen.
it's just
Awful.
like
Awful.
it is. It just keeps, and we see these rises in some of these problems and we're like, what's going on? Well, nobody wants to talk about the fact that porn is at the bottom of so many of these problems. But anyway, I woke up the next morning and I just had this thought keep coming to my mind, which caused me to look for a resource. Like there must be a book that you can read your kids. It teaches them, stay away from porn, right? Like I knew there were body safety books.
Right.
So I thought, well, there's going to be a porn safety book, right? And I looked and looked and looked because I thought, well, I'll get it and I'll give it to this woman, this poor mother, that she can at least read to her other kids. And couldn't find anything. And then I started doing some more research and I learned about, the fact that we have two brains and how they're impacted by pornography and all this. And as I learned more about this, I thought, we can boil this down for a 7-year-old. Like what? Why not? Why not? So I'm kind of one of those people that jump in and then figure out
Figure it
if
out
I can
later.
swim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
clearly.
so I did. I kind of jumped into this thinking, oh, it'll take a few weeks in the summer. I think that was 2011. And it took me 3 years and help from a lot of people, experts, and parents.
Wow.
Lots of feedback from parents before we got it published as Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Porn Proofing Today's Young Kids. It's a read aloud book. As you did it with your kids, you read it aloud, you just read it. And it's a conversation and it shows a proactive mom starting the conversation. And a dad comes in at the end. So that's kind of how I got started. I saw a problem and I just felt compelled that I had to do something about this problem. And I just feel like that's one of the reasons I'm on the planet. There are a lot of problems that I've seen and heard about, and I have not felt compelled to do anything about other than maybe make a donation, right?
Yeah.
But this one, I just felt compelled that I had to do something. And so I have a background in English literature. I've done some writing,
there it is. Yeah.
a little bit technical writing. So I thought, well, I'll try. I'll just see what'll come of this. And
it did. How did you, just to ask like a little details, but how did you find an illustrator? How did you get somebody on board to be like, hey, how would you like to draw this book for me?
I know, because it's not something you really want.
Yeah, exactly.
Want your name attached to.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you. So there's a story behind that.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I have a friend. Her name is Debbie Fox. She's the illustrator. And I'd known her for years and years. And I knew she could do watercolor painting.
Yeah.
And I ran into her because I'd moved away. And so we were in a similar, like at a conference together. And I ran into her and I'm like, I'm doing this book and I need an illustrator. Would you consider it? And she goes, well, I'll think about it. Because she had, so years before, my son had passed away from the result of an accident that he'd had as a young child, and anyway, he passed away, and um, she took the picture of him that was on the memorial,
Mm-hmm.
service thing that we gave out. And she took a picture, and she painted it. And if you look in the inside of this book, you'll see that, you'll see it.
Oh, wow.
And she painted him and brought it to me all framed as a gift after he died.
Wow.
And so it was such a sweet, sweet gift. And I just have an emotional connection
Yeah, absolutely.
there. And so I just couldn't think of any. And then I also didn't want it. I wanted it to be very, like, watercolor was soft
Soft.
and
Yeah. Inviting.
classic
Yeah. Yeah.
to kind of counter, you know, pornography.
Yep.
I just wanted it to be, and I wanted it to be more realistic and not cartoonish. And,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be very careful with this first book, and the illustrations. And so she just seemed perfect, and she worked very hard to do this. It was definitely outside of her comfort zone, but um, so to me, the illustrations mean a lot,
I can see that.
and it's so that's how uh, we found her, and she agreed to do the junior book as well,
Mm-hmm.
which was wonderful. So that's the story behind how I got the illustrator. And it was great because she would do it in a way that I could afford at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
have the money to spend.
Was it?
Illustration can be very
It
expensive.
can.
So
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, and so was it when you were asking her, was it one of those things where you like invite her out for coffee and you're like, so I want you to draw a book for me. What about pornography? Like you kind of like say that under your breath, like
yeah, yeah.
pornography.
Um, no,
No, I'm sure.
I
I'm just
was
joking.
actually in
Yeah.
line at this. We were going to
Uh-huh.
a women's conference
Yeah.
together, and or not together, but I saw her there, and which was great because there were like hundreds and hundreds and
That's
maybe even
incredible.
thousands of women there, and I
Wow.
happened to run into her.
That's great.
I'm like, I'm doing this book.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this book, and I need an illustrator. Would you think about doing it? And this is what the book is about. And she was just on board pretty
That's
much
awesome.
from the
That's
get-go.
awesome.
She was
That's
like,
awesome.
that sounds like a great idea. And I think she knew she had had three boys herself,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
she knew the
Yep.
temptations
Absolutely. It's there.
and the difficulties. So, like, yeah, she was on board.
Praise God. Well, the Lord knows.
Thankfully,
Yes,
yes.
yes, the Lord knows what He's doing.
Thankfully.
So let's kind of backtrack here. Let's start. Thank you for sharing all of that. Great story. It's beautiful in terms of how you got into this. But the impetus, I was really struck by what you said, that this mom comes to you, of a homeschooling mom, has a number of kids, trying her best to kind of raise them in the faith, protect them from the dangers of the world here. And then she discovers that her 17-year-old son, who had some history with pornography, is now uh, performing these acts on younger siblings, molesting younger siblings. And then one of those younger siblings, as you've shared now, even later, had to serve some jail time for other offenses. So a story like that can be jarring, I think, for somebody who's like, well, I thought that that's what you're supposed to do. Like if we, and we homeschool, so I'll put myself out there up until high school, and then we put the kids in high school. And if we feel that, like, if we just kind of keep them close, shelter them, then that's going to be enough to protect them, from these issues. And I'm in no way judging this mom and her family situation. I don't know her, obviously. Everybody, there's nothing. I'm not saying anything there, but I feel like with this issue, it takes more than just simply that. And so where do we start? If it isn't just, we have to obviously have some protections and some restrictions in place. We can't just have complete exposure, no filters, nothing. But there needs to be kind of a little bit of a balance there, so that the kids are being equipped to be able to live the virtues and practice the virtues that we're trying to instill in them. And so what do you think about, what does that balance kind of look like? And how do we try to do that, as parents?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would do is realize that, there's technical things you can do, like the parental controls and the filters and all those things. And I highly recommend that you do all those things. Um, but you can't count on them because the
Hmm.
minute they walk out the door, all bets are off, right?
Right.
So there has to be these external kind of technical filters, but there's an internal filter that needs to be built layer by layer by layer, um, where you teach them, what pornography is, why it's harmful, and what to do when they see it, and which is, in the books, those three things: a definition, a warning, and a plan. Um, and I would invite anyone listening to go over to defendyoungminds.com, my website, and get the free downloadable guide, which is how to talk to kids about pornography. And that's where we walk you through 3 steps, which is educate yourself, get the facts, arm your kids, and continue the conversations. And we give you some specific ways to do each of those 3 process, and it's an iterative process. So you're always wanting to be getting the facts
Hmm.
and learning and keeping current, and then arming your kids. As they grow up, you're going to, those conversations are going to change and mature with them. And then, again, continuing those conversations so that you're always open. They know you're the one to come and talk to. You get comfortable. You're not going to be comfortable at the beginning. That's okay, but you get comfortable. So
Yes.
go to defendingminds.com, download the how to talk to kids about pornography. It's completely free, and it'll get you started. So this is the thing. It's like you just want to take baby steps,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Just take a step and then take another step and then take another step and unfold. And you can tackle this topic. You can really tackle it, and you can get to the point where you can give your kids some defenses and your family some really good defenses against this enemy.
Hmm.
Um,
Amen. I think what I've appreciated about what you're saying now, and the approach that you take in the book also, and even on the website, use this phrase "digital self-defense," and I really like that term because what you're doing. And tell me again, you said educate, uh, and
so get the
get the
facts,
facts for the kid. Yeah, but
right? So
yeah, go
get the
ahead, get
facts,
the
arm the
facts.
kids,
Yeah, right. Arm the
arm the
kids,
kids,
and then continue the
and
conversation.
continue the conversations.
But in the book, you say for the kids to educate them, warn them, and have a plan. How did you say that again? The 3 there.
So yeah,
I want
so
to make sure I
they
get it
need
right.
the definition. So
Definition.
there's so many
Yeah.
kids, like, they hear, oh, don't look at pornography. Well, they
But
don't
what does
even
that
know
mean?
what pornography
Yeah.
means. So they may even be looking at it. I have heard of so many kids who are like, well, I was looking at it for years. I never even knew that it was called pornography.
Hmm.
So here they were telling me, don't ever look at pornography. And I did not know what it was. So we have to define the term so that the kids know what we're talking about. And in my junior book, if you don't want to call it pornography, fine, call it a bad picture.
Hmm.
But they need to have just a little bit of an age appropriate
Right.
definition so that they can recognize it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
once they recognize it, then they can start to do the other things that they need to defend themselves.
Yeah. That's it. And I think what I appreciate here is that this is a proactive approach, and it's a recognition that, okay, listen, we can have all the filters, and we should. We have covenant eyes. We have the filters. We can have the and we do all that for sure. We limit media usage, online usage, certainly. We have those restrictions, technical restrictions we're allowed to have. But as you stated, as soon as they step out of the house, and at some point they're going to step out of the house, even if you keep them completely sheltered, they're going to go over a sleepover. They're going to be over at somebody, even a family member's house, or even when they turn 18 and they go to college. I mean, at some point they're going to be leaving. And we have to make sure that they're prepared for that event. And so when I've talked about this issue publicly, or when I talk to parents about it, I remind parents that, like, we have to maintain the long game here when it comes to our kids. Like, what really is the goal that we're trying to accomplish? And we're trying to raise healthy, functioning young adults. Like that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. We want them to love Jesus. We want them to know the Lord, but we want them to be able to also be able to operate within the world and to be healthy socially, emotionally, all that stuff. And that they can navigate relationships and engagements in circles, and that they have a certain savvy to them to be able to navigate things as they are. And that means that we have to educate them, as you've been saying, specifically with this issue, that there are real pitfalls that are here and that we can't fool around with this, that there's real dangers that emerge. And we want to educate our kids to be able to know what those dangers are, what those potential pitfalls are, and know how to be able to respond to it, afterwards. And so this is where it becomes kind of like a balance is like we have all the filters, but do I know that am I crazy enough to think that like they can't get around it or that they can go over somebody's house or something? I'm like, no, of course. Like I know that, but I want them to be educated and to know what to do when those moments arise. And so it's like, this is the way I kind of define it is I'm trying the best that I can to prevent my kids from having exposure, but I know that's impossible in today's day and age. Okay. And that's not cynical to say that. That's just what it is. It's impossible to say my kids will never be exposed to pornography. That's just an impossible statement. And so that's not my aim. My aim is I don't want my kids to be addicted to pornography by the time they leave my house. Like that's my goal. I don't want them to not be habituated users of said images and behaviors by the time that they leave, and even into young adulthood. Like if I can do that, then I think I've accomplished my job. One of the many, but I think I've accomplished one of them as a parent. And so that becomes the goal. And if we set that as the goal, then that kind of shifts the conversation. So if it is that our goal was limit no exposure whatsoever, we come in and we see something, we slam the computer, we toss it out, we make a big scene about it. Well, guess what? You're not talking to your kids in that. I can recognize that we can have kind of a reaction certainly to that. But if we're maintaining the long-term perspective, it's like, okay, well, let's kind of talk about this. Right. Yes, that's wrong. Yes, you shouldn't be looking at it, but let's have a conversation as to why it is and talk about like, what's the challenge and why it's hard to avert your eyes and how God made you and why that's beautiful, to be attracted to attractive people. Like that's all part of your design. And that's not something to be ashamed about, but also recognizing that it can get hijacked and that the systems can be taken awry there. And so again, that's what I think I appreciate about this proactive approach that you so often talk about. Any thoughts?
I love that. And I would only add that two things. In this country, we have protected children from tobacco use, alcohol use, right? We do not sell cigarettes to, to underage minors or alcohol. Not that they can't get to them, they try, but we don't sanction it. But we have not done the same for pornography. So unfortunately, pornography addiction is the most likely addiction for a young person today. It's not going to be any kind of drug. It's going to be the drug of porn. So that's one thing we need to kind of realize is that even young children can get addicted to pornography. And you might think, well, wait a minute, it's even before they've become like, they're not through puberty. And how can that be? Well, kids can be sexualized at an early age, and pornography can do it. So that was the first thing, is that addiction is like the most likely thing. So why shouldn't we talk to our kids about addiction? Why shouldn't we explain the brain science in a simplified way behind addiction? And that's what I do in that first book for kids ages 7 to 11. So explaining, what the thinking brain is, what the feeling brain is, and how they work together, and how one can get hijacked by an addiction. And it really applies to all addictions. So addiction proofing your child, whether it is the addiction to video games, the addiction to porn, addiction to any other kind of behaviors or to substances, it's all the same process in the brain. So I feel like in this day and age, when there's so many opportunities, you become addicted to anything. My addiction is food. I mean, honestly, I'm always having to work on that. And And it became, in my early, as a young child, it became like my comfort when
Yeah.
things were falling apart in my family of origin. So I went to food.
Yeah.
So we kids do use pornography to, and that's another conversation, but they hire porn to do a job for them. And
Mm.
if we can recognize that, to them, in their minds, if they need to learn about sex and we haven't talked to them,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
well, they're going to hire porn.
Yeah.
If they have an emotional, if they can't deal with their emotions and they're lonely, stressed, whatever, and feeling bad about themselves, worried, um, and they don't have other ways to deal with it, um, they can hire porn. Porn
Mm.
is actually a very effective distractor
Mm-hmm.
from negative emotions, but that's what drives the addiction process. And then finally, so so again, recognizing that it can become an addiction, that children can actually develop an addiction to this material. Um, that is one thing. And that, I love the fact that your goal is, you know, let's launch them without an addiction.
Yes,
Woo!
exactly.
That would be
That'd be
wonderful.
wonderful.
That would be that
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
that's a beautiful goal.
I,
And
I,
but
I say this often,
but
sorry to interrupt you, but like
no.
like when it comes to like this or even like cleanliness at the house, I always tell my wife, I'm like, I want to make sure that our future daughter-in-laws like us. you know, that like we've raised men who actually know how to do some things, like, and they're okay. Like I want to make sure that nobody, just being funny here, but
Yeah, that's a very good goal. That's a good goal.
but keep going.
But so the second thing is, along with the no addiction,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I would say I want to raise our children with a healthy, beautiful view of, concept of sex.
Amen. Amen. That's
Because,
right.
and I want to be clear, because you can, because pornography will teach them the exact opposite, will teach them a very unhealthy,
Mm-hmm.
toxic, poisonous version of sex that is completely 180 degrees opposite
Mm-hmm.
what, you know beautiful, how sex can be a very positive and a beautiful thing in a relationship, in a marriage. So we have an article that compares, healthy sex to porn sex,
Mm-hmm.
and has 7 different ways that they're
Mm-hmm.
completely different. And if we can give our kids, especially as they get a little older, but clarity, like, okay, this is what healthy sex is,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what porn sex will teach you. It will isolate you. It will teach you to objectify. It will train your brain to objectify others, their bodies. It will make you think that sex is all about degrading others and being violent to them and getting what you want. Whereas, we want you to see that sex can be this, this ideal, this beautiful thing, this loving, trusting, and so that's the thing, is I I want those two things. I want the not addicted, and also to have this beautiful, healthy view of, married sex, where
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's very difficult to achieve that
Mm-hmm. Yep.
if you're addicted to porn, or if you've used porn, or if porn has taught you all you know about sex,
Right.
because it's cheated you. It's we talk about kids having a sexual template, and I'm sure you've heard
Mm-hmm.
that term,
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
the sexual template in their brain that is laid down, and it is completely um, destroyed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
just
the arousal template absolutely gets
yeah,
infected by pornography. There's no doubt about
yeah,
that. There's a saying
yeah,
attributed to John Paul II that says, Pope John Paul II, it says, he said, the problem with pornography isn't that it reveals too much, but that it reveals too little. And I've heard this quote for years, and I'm sure you probably have, also being in this
yeah,
world. And that's what a brilliant way of summarizing exactly what the issue is. It's that the graphicness of it can only be achieved when you lose sight of the great mystery that's present. And the mystery is part of the reality. The mystery, the trust, the hiddenness, the quietness, the privacy. There's an element of this that as soon as you put a spotlight on it and as soon as you expose it, you've lost it. It's because it can't be translated in that light. And so it requires conversations for sure, but it can't be explicit. We can have conversations that speak about it, that encourage, that educate, absolutely, but that always maintain a certain level of reverence, I should say, for what's actually happening.
Yeah. And I would say too that, when you talk about the mystery, to me, the mystery is that two people come together and they develop a uniquely beautiful relationship that's unique and that you're not going to learn by watching porn.
That's right.
Or anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
I think we're equipped to be able to do that, and that's where intimacy comes from, right? In that unique relationship that is not like any other. And so porn does not teach, porn teaches you that you can do this with anybody.
Yep.
However you want, any gender,
whatever way you want,
exactly. And in any way, and any, it's just all about your own pleasure and all about your own, entertainment.
Yeah, that's the word.
So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that it's a really, sex is a solo experience. That's what happens. They talk about addicts that, users will come together to use, cocaine or meth or whatever, but they always end up by themselves, alone, and that's really what happens with porn.
Yeah.
And even if you're married, it really does. There's studies that show that it definitely impacts and
detrimentally,
your
absolutely,
marriage.
Yeah.
And
comparison, you start judging, thinking that your bodies don't look as good. I mean, you're comparing your spouse's body. I mean, it's just no bueno. Like that's the research.
When I talk to kids, I'm like, okay, when you grow up and you have, you're married and you're being intimate with your spouse, do you want porn to be the third partner in your, in your sex life? And I'm like, do you want, porn? And I said, some men, maybe even some women have to watch porn in order to get aroused to have sex with their actual partner. So, do you want that? And I'll say, girls, do you, does that sound like a good idea? And I am like, guys, do you want, your wives to be comparing you with the men in porn? And, I think they're like, oh yeah, maybe that isn't a good thing.
Right.
Maybe we don't want porn in our sex life. And you don't.
Right.
You really don't. It's not going to do anything good. In fact, when they've done some studies that show that if both partners, and I've heard that some therapists out there will say, well, you're having problems with your sex life, so just watch sex, right? Just watch porn, and that'll really help you, which is completely not even understanding the basis of the problem they're having.
Right.
But in any case, if they do that, they have a 3 times greater risk factor of getting divorced or actually infidelity.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No bueno.
No bueno. That's the word. Yeah, agreed. All right, everybody, taking a quick break from my conversation with Kristen Jenson to encourage you to check out my latest course on stress and anxiety. Maybe this conversation about talking to your kids about pornography is raising your stress and anxiety, and you need somewhere to be able to know how to process that. then check out my course, Overcoming Stress and Anxiety. I put it together with the folks at Good Catholic. So head on over to goodcatholic.com. Wonderful, great resource there available for you. What it is, it's 21 days where I'm going to teach you what anxiety is, how it affects the body, but then also being able to give you the skills that you need. So we go through meditative exercises, guided imagery stuff, breathing exercises, and we try to help you to be able to understand the nature of anxiety, its spiritual implications, its emotional implications, to help you to be able to overcome it in your life. So if we can see it, we can name it, and then we can be able to overcome it. So Overcoming Stress and Anxiety, head on over to goodcatholic.com to be able to purchase the course for yourself. If you like a little discount and you want to support the podcast as well, then use Sakasa25 to get 25% off. That also is an affiliate link. And so some of the proceeds of that will come back in to help the podcast. So again, goodcatholic.com, Overcoming Stress and Anxiety. Use code SAKASA25 to get 25% off, and you're also going to help this podcast. Let's get back to this conversation with Kristen Jenson. All right, so how early do you think parents should be having these conversations with their kids? How soon should they be tackling this topic? Not just about sex, but I guess they can go hand in hand here. You know, talks about, and I have some thoughts about this also, but it also specifically talks about, pornography and awareness and educating them. How soon should parents be having that conversation with their kids?
Well, I came to realize that it needs to be a lot earlier than we think, because I've seen so many young children who are on iPads. So any kid on the internet. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to tell you an age, but I'm going to say as soon as your child has any access to the internet, any. I was asked to speak at a early childhood ed conference, right? Yeah. So we're talking preschool, right? And very early education years. And so I went, and I'm giving a presentation on Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, and we have a play therapy guide that goes with that book now. Mm-hmm. And so I'm presenting this, and before I'm doing my second day, this woman comes in and sits down like 10 minutes before the class starts. She goes, I just want to make sure I got a seat. And she said, so we're like, oh, we're glad you're here. And she says, I was shocked when I saw that this topic was being taught. Mm-hmm. This class was being offered at this conference. Mm-hmm. I was absolutely shocked. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, really? And then she says, but I know from personal experience how important it is. And so she told us about how there's a 3-year-old in her life that she knew. And she said that they found that this 3-year-old was videoing herself taking off her clothes. All right. That's bad. Right. That's bad enough. Right. But then they found videos of her. So this little girl knows enough to videotape herself taking off her clothes and doing things that didn't seem normal for a 3-year-old. Right. Then they found that she had videotaped herself trying to have sex with the family pet.
Oh, mercy.
Mind blown. My mind was blown. Mercy. Like, mind blown. But like, these kids are getting easy access, maybe even through YouTube, wherever, and they're seeing things, and we can't blame them.
Right.
Because their little minds are like, they're so imitative. Right. So when you ask me, like, when do you need to start? I'm like, 3.
3. Yes.
Maybe I started reading these books this junior book to my young grandsons at 2. Okay. Just so they get used to it. It's no big thing to them. Right. For us, we're like, oh. Yeah. But so as soon as they have any access to the internet in any way, shape, or form, I would say start to warn them. And like, the junior book doesn't talk anything about sex. Mm-hmm. So you can warn these kids about what to do if they see, um, you know, uh, basically people with no clothes on,
Right.
right? If they see that on a screen. Now, if your child comes and they're like, I saw a naked person on a screen, it's probably not the Sistine Chapel, right? It's probably
Probably,
not the David,
probably not.
right?
Probably not.
And you probably want to know about
Right.
it,
That's
right?
right.
So we are giving them a very truncated definition of porn,
Hmm.
but it's just enough so a young child can recognize it and know, I need to tell somebody that I saw
Yeah.
this. And so
And help them to
I'm
norm.
trying.
No, no,
What
this is
was your original
that was
question?
beautiful.
It was
No, no.
like,
How old? How old? And you
yeah,
said 3, and it's
how
beautiful.
old? So
And
yes,
so, so
yes.
yeah. So we want to educate them at a young age, so that they can talk, and also to help normalize their experience. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't encourage anybody to do this, but I've gone on the Planned Parenthood websites just to kind of see what they encourage, kids to look at or what to do. And they have a ton of resources, for kids and teens in terms of sex education and what you can do. And it's obviously completely open to all of this and self-stimulation and all of that. And I find it curious that even when they're talking about masturbation, for example, that it's like they say feeling guilty is normal. And but but don't pay attention to it, basically. You know what I mean? It's normal, but don't pay attention to it. It's like you're encouraging sociopathy is what you're doing there. You know what I mean? You're encouraging people to not feel guilty for a behavior that they should feel guilty about. And so it is a sense that, like, if a kid looks at something, he kind of knows. I mean, if he comes and talks to you, that's great. That means you've established really great rapport with your children. I mean, but that's a lot for a kid, to be able to come and to state that, because they do feel this mix of guilt, because everybody has a conscience that knows that, like, I'm looking at something I shouldn't be looking at. And
That's wrong.
and so if we've educated
Yeah.
them enough to be able to see that, to acknowledge it, then they can label it, and it gives that experience somewhere, a framework that it can rest upon, rather than just saying, well, don't pay attention to any of it. It's all, or whatever the case may be. So we have been talking a lot about, I would say, maybe the prevention side or the proactive side. But what about if we do have this situation? Okay, let's say we have this situation where we're on the family computer or on the iPad, and we're kind of thumbing through the history, or we get the Covenant Eyes report that comes in, and we start seeing that there's a couple things, a couple flags there, or we become aware that the kid has been looking at something for a more extended period of time than when we've let on. How do you encourage parents to have those follow-up conversations with them, if they haven't been as proactive? What do you tell parents once they discover that pornography is in the home? How do you encourage parents to have those conversations with their children?
Yeah. Well, we have put together a an ebook called "My Kids Saw Porn, Now What?"
Yeah.
And it's called A Smart Plan for Parents. So basically, stay calm. Don't jump down their throat. Don't react. Make sure you deal with your own emotions first, which you may have emotions of anger, fear, shame, embarrassment, whatever, right? Um, and you need to deal with those first. And then, so if you find out, I would say put it off for 24, 48, 72 hours. There's no harm in just waiting, you
Hmm.
know, a little bit
Yeah.
to get your act together, right? To get your emotional act together so that you're not transferring all this fury
Mm-hmm.
into your child, and so that they can talk to you about it. Because if you're super emotional, they're going to pull back,
Right.
and they don't want to go
Right.
there. Um, and then, so S is stay calm or get calm, I guess. And then M is make a
Mm-hmm.
plan. So whether it's with your spouse or another friend or somebody that can help you in the parenting process, how are you gonna deal with this? What are you gonna do for discipline? What are you gonna do for helping this child, finding out like how deep they're into it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have a list of questions to get answered, and you don't want to, it's not like the Spanish Inquisition, right? You don't want to get in there and, you know,
Interrogate them. get the
sorry, I mentioned,
spotlight,
yeah, it's not like,
put the spotlight on it.
yeah, the
Yeah, exactly.
interrogation with the spotlight.
Exactly.
You don't want to do
Yeah.
that. But you want to, you know, little by little, drip by drip, conversation by conversation, get these questions answered so you have a better idea of like where you
Mm-hmm.
are. And you're always wanting to preserve that relationship because um, if they are heavily involved in it, there's no switch. You're not going to just turn a switch and say, uh, never look at porn again. This is terrible. You're terrible, whatever. No. It is going to be a process of rewiring your child's brain.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be a part of it, and they need to be a willing part of it.
Yes.
Um, so we have a lot of great resources in this. It's like 90-page ebook. We have things about, other parents' experience when their kids were kind of caught in the porn trap. We talk about how to train your kids on technology and regularly check in with them. We
Can,
answer questions like, does my kid need
yeah.
counseling? Um,
Can you finish?
and maybe
Can you
and some
finish
tips for
the
overcoming.
SMART? You're starting the acronym.
Smart. Okay.
Stay calm.
Yes.
Make a plan.
Make a
What's the
plan.
A?
Assess their kids' confused feelings,
Uh-huh.
because you were talking about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
confusion
Yeah.
there, and help their children to understand that yes, they're going to feel intrigued
Mm-hmm.
and repulsed sometimes at the same moment. And then regularly check in. So that's R. So this needs to be a conversation that's ongoing. And then tech train the entire family. So training your kids on technology, stewardship, accountability with technology. And so that's the SMART plan. And then we go into a lot of other, like I said, we delve into a lot of other issues that, we'll get questions from our audience members, and then we'll have like a therapist write an answer for us, and we'll share that. So like if your child sees porn and it's upsetting, do you want them to describe it to you or not? That's one of the questions that we answer in this guide, and it's on
Mm-hmm.
defendyoungminds.com. And you can download it instantly.
It's great.
And we have several other guides. Some of them are free, some of them are small fee, but it all helps to support our work at Defend Young Minds. So that's my best curated advice for what to do if your child is already kind of involved and you may not have known it. And I also want to give you some grace to just forgive yourself.
Yes. Right. That's right.
You're not alone, and to forgive your child, and to just realize that porn is the enemy and your child is not the enemy.
That's great. That's great. To position and make sure what we're attacking, that isn't our children, but that it is pornography, and to help them then to be able to overcome those challenges if they happen to be fallen into some type of habituated response to it. Now, you mentioned this earlier, and I just kind of want to come back to this and spend a few minutes talking about this. You said that we don't sell cigarettes to underage to minors. We don't sell alcohol to minors. Yes, they get access to it, but we don't support that. It's illegal. You can be arrested if you give minors alcohol. But a couple states have age verification. Louisiana led the way, and I think maybe Utah is kind of number 2. But there's in terms of pornography websites. And so I guess this is my question. Yes, absolutely. I want to do everything I can to have the filters, to have the restrictions. Yes, I do everything I can to have these conversations with my kids. But my goodness, at what point do we start saying we need help, from the government to be able to say, we got to step in and reevaluate? I mean, so we're talking about pornography, but even when it comes to technology as a whole, the research is abundantly clear, in terms of there's a high correlation between the number of hours you spend online as a teenager and the increase of depression, anxiety. I mean, the mental health issues. It all goes on, and so it's abundantly clear that if we're spending too much time online, and particularly as a teen, that those things are going to have detrimental effects on our mental health moving forward. And so at what point do we say, my goodness, like we need, and not that I'm somebody who genuinely wants the government to intervene, but there has to come a point where we say, like, it isn't working this way, and the cards are stacked against us, because these industries are so savvy and are so sophisticated and have the brightest psychologists, influencing all the behaviors to make sure that we are as compelled to use these devices and these apps and everything as much as possible. And so it is stacked against us in some ways as parents. And so I guess my question is, what can we do on that front? And what do you recommend? What are your thoughts about that in general, I guess?
I absolutely agree that it's stacked against us. I absolutely agree that the government needs to hold big tech responsible, not only for the addictive nature of the products, but also the fact that on their platform, there's all kinds of sex trafficking that
Right.
is organized and solicited. So there's an act called the Earn It Act that is being championed by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which you started out this segment talking about. So yes, parents need help. It is not right that parents are being tasked to do all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, until we get those laws in place and until we get big tech to use the technology they already have to, protect children, until we can get that, what are we going to do?
Right.
We have to do kind of almost extreme measures. And we have to not only educate them, we have to monitor them because, their brains are not fully developed. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. Their judgment, their ability to have discipline, right, is not fully developed. So we need to be their prefrontal cortex.
That's right.
We need to add ours to theirs and monitor them and help them. They may not always appreciate that, but we're the parent, right? We know what we need to do. They don't know what we need. Kids do not always know what's best for them. Right. So I would say that, yeah, it is stacked. And so this is what I kind of put out there. Given that it's practically a full-time job to do this as a parent, like there's just so much. I would recommend that you do as much as possible when you're raising your kids to simplify your life, to sacrifice some things that take too much time, take time away, and to make sure that you have the time to have these conversations, to spend quality time with your children, quality and quantity time with your children. They're not going to actually be with you that long. And I know this myself. And then, and I used to tell my kids, I take my hands and I'm like, okay, between now and the time you're 18 or you're pretty much an adult, I get to tell you things. I get to limit things. I get to make rules, right? But from age 18 all the way to the time you die, all the way your rest of your life, you get to make decisions, and then it's going to be up to you. But until then, I get to make decisions. And I've kind of gone a little far off
You're
here,
fine.
but I'm just talking about parenting.
Parenting.
Like
So
you do need to come down sometimes and make the rules. Hopefully you're going to get buy-in from your kids and have a good relationship. And that's the ideal, because then you'll have more influence over them. Because kids, it's amazing. Like they can get burner phones and you will never know that they have a burner phone that's using your Wi-Fi. And so you got to like this internal filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we talked about before. So I wish it were different. I wish that we had more help. And the other thing I would say is I would forestall. I would get, like, when I get a phone for my kid, I would get a safe phone.
Mm-hmm.
There's many more now available. There's the Gab phone, the Pinwheel phone, the Trumi
Mm-hmm.
phone, the Bark
Mm-hmm.
phone. Um, and I think I just heard of another phone. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
um, so I think that there's safer things that you can do. We have articles on defend young minds. In fact, we just posted another one that is like comparing 4 or 5 different kinds of phones um, for kids. So check that out and get educated about your options. Until then, we are going to have to. We just are going to have to work very hard to. But it can be
It can be
done,
done.
and we can
It
do
can be done.
it.
Yep, it's possible.
And we have to
Right.
focus, right? Because, and I promise you, you will be anything you give up now for your kids that is going to go into their, to their benefit, you will reap
Hmm.
the rewards for many years to come and for their children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you said, play the long
Mm-hmm.
game. And I look back on my own life, and I got to be a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I still see things that I was distracted with, and I kind of wish I hadn't been. So focus on your kids, do everything you can, simplify your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
And have a game plan.
and I think that you do the best, and then say your prayers.
Say your prayers, and then
Obviously.
and trust that they listen. And I think that's the thing. I mean, I know
Yeah.
with my teenagers, there's been times where I've like come down on them about something, and they've been like, "Dad, we got it," not in a defensive way, but just like, "Dad, like we got it." I'm like, "Oh
You
yeah,
don't need to
yeah."
worry.
Like, "Oh,
We
you
understand.
are listening." So it's like that's news
They
to me.
are
They are
listening. They
listening.
may not want to show that
Yeah,
they are,
yeah, yeah,
right? But I
absolutely.
think they,
Well,
and sometimes,
go ahead.
and different kids have different reactions.
Hmm.
You probably notice
Oh
this
yeah,
too.
absolutely.
When we had our talks with our daughters about sex, one daughter was like, "Okay, got it. Don't need to say another word." Um, you
Yeah,
know, um, and before she got married, I handed her some
yeah.
books. Like, here's some more information. Okay, thanks, mom. Thanks. Took the books, um, but didn't want to talk. Like, I don't want to talk about this with you. But my other daughter was completely
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah,
Like, when we first started with this book and talking to her, she's like, "Can we read that book
yeah.
again? I'm really," and she had questions, and she's much more just
Hmm.
open to these topics. So it's okay
Hmm.
that they're
Hmm.
different, but we still need to have these
That's right.
conversations.
That's right. And we need to have them early, as you said, and continuous throughout their life. And so there are age appropriate discussions that we can have when they're 3, when they're 4, when they're 5, then when they're 8, 9, and then when they're preteens and teens. We just remind that these conversations are on the table, and we want to be able to talk to them about it. And so again, the approach you've taken is this very empowering, proactive approach, and that even if they've been seeing it, great, that's wonderful. So just to follow up briefly, if you can say something just about the Earn It Act, since you kind of talked about it briefly, a couple words, more about it, or what is it that we should be aware of with that?
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on it, but
Mm-hmm.
basically it is like today, if your child is solicited or seduced or whatever on Instagram and trafficked, um, using Instagram or Twitter or one of these big platforms, right? Any kind of a platform like that, um, you can't sue that platform.
Hmm.
They have no accountability. Right now, they can, you know, so so the Earn It Act is is basically giving people the right to sue the company that provided the platform for their, for trafficking and these kinds of sexual exploitation um, acts. So that's the gist of
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
because they're getting off scot-free right
Right.
now. They're hiding behind this
Mm-hmm.
immunity, um, which says, well, we just have a platform. We can't, we can't be responsible for everything on the platform. Well, they are in other
Mm-hmm.
countries, right? But not in the United States.
Wow.
So we need to make them accountable for the fact that Instagram, for example, Instagram is, you know, there are kids that are trafficked using
Mm.
Instagram. So I think that Instagram should be accountable for some of that. And I think that once you make them accountable, guess what? They're going to use their technology to figure out how to
That
stop it.
that they will. That they will. That's great.
Yeah, they
They
will.
will.
I have full
I do
confidence in
too.
their
I,
ability.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
You're so funny. Well, Kristen, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to sit down and chat with me. If people are interested in the book or those other resources, tell them the website once again. How can they find it, and what else is there available for them?
Yes. So defendyoungminds.com. We have free guides that how to talk to kids about pornography. Go download that. I would say that's step number one. If your kids have been involved in pornography and you're concerned about how to, tackle that, I would start with our My Kids Saw Porn Now What. It's a small fee, but uh, very, very good investment, I would say. And yeah, check out the books. There are links to the books on Amazon, and we just hit 3,000 reviews on Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Porn Proofing Today's Young Kids. And you can see all the thousands of reviews. I'm sure you're not going to read them all, but you can read a few and you can see how parents are finding them so comfortable. Um, and we have a new book called Counseling Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. Guidebook for Counseling Kids, and this is therapeutic interventions to address pornography issues using artistic, didactic, and kinesthetic applications. So that sounds pretty fancy, but that's for and really parents could use this.
Right.
But I did do it because I had so many therapists that use our books, and they wanted a guidebook to help them. So these are wonderful interventions and activities that you can do to kind of just really solidify these
Mm-hmm.
concepts and not only help kids that have not seen pornography, but kids that have been harmed by
Mm.
pornography and help them to
Yeah.
heal. So that's another resource that we have. And really, our articles, we really put a lot of effort
It's great.
and resources and time and
Mm-hmm.
money into writing these articles, having experts write these articles to help parents navigate the technology and also just keep a heads up on what is happening out there, like is Roblox safe, and these kinds of things that parents need to know. And you know what, we don't expect you to go and read a 300 and 500 page book to get all this information, which would be obsolete in 6 months.
Yeah.
But we do kind of drip, drip, drip
Mm-hmm.
every week, send you an email with our latest challenges, our latest information, our latest articles. So we would invite you to join our Defending Minds community and family, and also follow us on Instagram. It's the one of the good things on Instagram, and Facebook, um, and LinkedIn and Twitter, if it's still
Yeah.
Twitter,
Whatever it's called. Yeah.
um, whatever it's called. And so we are on social media again,
It's great.
trying to get words of encouragement and help out to parents. You're not alone. And we just want to help you with, what is the most challenging time to parent ever
Yes.
is
Yeah.
today. So yeah, thank you
You're
so much
welcome.
for having me. And I hope that we can be of service to other families like we have been to
Yeah.
yours.
Thank you. Well, final question to ask all my first time guests. Kristen Jenson, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? I think children have an innate um, feeling, conscience, and if you teach them, they will often
Hmm.
do what you ask them to do.
Hmm.
And especially the young children, and they want to, please you. And I think that um, I'll just tell you a quick story. It's
Yeah,
one of my
please.
favorites, and that is a 9-year-old boy was his mom read him good pictures, bad pictures, and walked him through, the plan of what to do if he ever saw pornography. She just wanted to make sure he was prepared. And 3 days later, he went to school, and one of his classmates called him over and had a
Mm.
smartphone, third grade, and said, "Hey, look at this." And it was pornography. And this kid recognized it,
Hmm.
and he knew. He went home. He turned away. He went home and he told his mom, and he said, "I was scared,
Mm.
but I knew what to
Oh,
do."
wow.
And
Wow.
so no kid deserves to face the porn industry alone. We can help them. We can give them digital defense skills. We can, it's not their responsibility, but they do need to have a heads up to know what to do so that we can help them. And that gives me hope that if we teach them, kids and parents working together can develop this internal filter, that children will have the wherewithal to turn away or to get help if they're just really struggling, um, with that. And I'll just say, along with that, to again teach your children to deal with their negative emotions so that, and to have that emotional resilience so that they don't turn to porn. So they have some other, they're
Hmm.
equipped. Um, and yeah, just love your children. And I think one of the most loving things you can do is to teach them
Hmm.
to recognize and reject
Hmm.
pornography.
Praise the Lord. Well, great answer. It's a great answer. So I genuinely appreciate the time. So many blessings to you and this endeavor, and continue to do the great work that you're doing to help educate families.
Thank you so much, Mario. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it from today's conversation with Kristen Jenson. If you've enjoyed it, then please check them out at Defend Young Minds. They have a lot of great resources there to help you parents to be able to navigate these conversations and to equip you to be able to set up your house and to just keep this as an ongoing conversation. Digital self-defense, that was a great term that she has used throughout her stuff, because the reality is that we can't, as we said in the podcast, you can't control for every factor, every variable, but we can teach our kids how to make right decisions and equip them to make it feel that is possible. So if you need a little bit extra help with this topic and you're looking for a monitoring software and a filtering software for home, then we certainly recommend that you check out Covenant Eyes. I had an episode recently with Sam Black where we talked about Covenant Eyes and the good work that they're doing there in his book. As well. And so I'm encouraging you, please, to go ahead and check out Covenant Eyes. We use it at our house, and it is a wonderful, wonderful software that allows us to be able to not just have the filtering, but to have the monitoring so that we get the daily reports so we can see what the kids are looking at. Again, it's not just about pornography, but it allows us to be able to have open conversations with our kids about what we see that they're doing. So if you head on over to covenanteyes.com, use code FAITHANDMARRIAGE to get 1 month free. If you sign up for that 1 month, you're also supporting the podcast as well and the work that we're doing at Faith and Marriage. So go on over to covenanteyes.com, Faith and Marriage. You're going to support the work that we're doing here at the podcast and also with this apostolate that we have. And so you can also get a great month free. Try it out, see if it works for you. We've loved it. It's been a phenomenal product that we use to help us to be able to, teach our kids, know what's going on in their digital lives. and just being able to have great conversations with them. So covenanteyes.com, use coupon code Faith in Marriage, give you 1 month free to try it out. And you're also going to support the podcast. So God bless you all. And we'll look forward to seeing you the next time.